College bowl season starts now, and no better person to bring on than one of the best known and originators in the sports betting business of college football, Mr. Brad Powers from bradpowersports.com. You can follow him on Twitter at bradpowers7. Brad, the holidays are here. I'm feeling the bowls coming on. Are you feeling merry or what?
I am. It's one of my favorite times of the year, believe it or not. I am a guy that more the merrier. I'm perfectly happy that there's 43 bowl games. I wish there was 83 bowl games.
Me too. I mean, you can't get enough sports betting. That's what people say. There's too many bowl games. There's too many bowl games. I disagree. I'm like, what is wrong with just having more things to bet on and having the books have to chase their tails a little bit more during a season? That only gives us an advantage that are sitting in front of the odds screen, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. And, a lot of people ask me, well, how do you bet that stuff? I mean, with all the opt outs and everything that's going on, I'm totally opposite. I want more opt outs. I want more coaching changes. I want more uncertainty because I feel like I can price it, or at least I can do the legwork because the sports books, it's not like they're hiring 10, 15 extra guys this time of the year. They're still dealing with college basketball, the NBA, the NFL, everything else that they got to deal with. So I love it. I'm very happy this time of the year, to say the least.
Same with me, but a somber thing that happened obviously this week. One of my favorite coaches, and I didn't even really know he was one of my favorite coaches until it actually happened. As everyone knows by now, the passing of Mike Leach just surprisingly at a very young age. And I got to tell you, Brad, I didn't know it impact me as much as it did because I thought about it a lot, the yesterday, kind of like all day a little bit, here and there. And I guess I really liked him a lot more than I even knew. And, I remember a lot of the funny things that he said in the media, and you got to appreciate like how he went to each team and had so many doubters and made them extremely competitive, sometimes just on impact, especially when he went to Wazoo. And I just would like to ask you what your thoughts are and how Mike Leach impacted college football throughout his coaching career.
First and foremost, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer in my book. I just did 20 years of success. I mean, consistent winning. Just because he doesn't have a national championship and a bunch of major bowl wins doesn't mean that he wasn't a Hall of Fame caliber coach. Obviously, what we see today's day and age of college football and football in general with the pass game, a lot of it can go attributed to what he and Hal Mumme started way back when in the Kentucky days in the mid 90s. So it's been a quarter century, but a lot of the passing concepts that are out there right now are, it came from, 25 years ago from Mike Leach's brain. So, obviously, besides the football, a very unique individual to say the least. And very good for college football in today's day and age where you didn't get too many people that, don't have a filter like Mike. I appreciated it. So I certainly posted a few of his videos. I know a lot of people are posting funny videos, and he certainly had a good sense of humor. I boasted that he was, incredible competitor too. So there's, he had a way of the English language that not many do, and I appreciate that, to say the least. So he's certainly one of my favorite guys the last 20 years. Betting on or against him, though, I will say he's a peculiar fellow. It's tough to bet on him and against him. I mean, I'll use the bowl game last year where I thought he would want revenge over what happened with Texas Tech. He is the type of guy that would have revenge, and they lose outright as a double-digit favorite and get blown out in the game. So he was a tough guy to get a hold of as far as when to bet on and against.
Certainly a tough nut to crack. So much charisma in that man. And he always made me feel bad about my team's offense. As a Badger fan, it's just, hippo package, right? I mean, in the NFL, I'm looking at my Bears, and they never had an offense since, in the 80s, maybe. And if you even call it an offense back then, but he always made me feel bad about my teams in that. I always felt that if he had a defense, he would have possibly made it to the next level and, maybe even sniff the playoffs. And it was just always a great offense from the days I remember. Mostly was Texas Tech, and then moving on to Washington State, when I started really paying attention to college football back then. But I mean, for me, I think that his legacy is definitely going to live on because
Oh yeah.
like you said, the many concepts that he brought to us in college football and to all the people under him have been very successful.
No doubt. I mean, his coaching tree's pretty vast. To be honest with you, there are a ton of guys that you wouldn't even think that either played for him, because there's a lot of guys like that played for him way back at Texas Tech days, that are out there. Even heck, even Tennessee's head coach Heupel. People forget Mike Leach was the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma those first couple of years when Bob Stoops resurrected that program. So, I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of guys that played under him, coached under him, and what you see, like I mentioned earlier, what you see as far as the pass game, a lot of it is what Mike Leach and others developed 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Was it you that said he retweeted one of your tweets last year to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was you. Okay. I was
Yeah.
wondering if it was you or Kyle. So what was that tweet that you put out?
It was a dig at Texas Tech. Keep in mind, Mike Leach at Texas Tech, it was probably their best decade in the history of the school. He never had a losing season in Big 12 play. And since they, undeservedly fired him, they had never at that point when he retweeted it, they had never had a winning Big 12 season since. So 10 straight winning Big 12 seasons, then 10 straight, followed by 10 straight losing Big 12 seasons after they fired him. So that's what he retweeted. I like that.
That was awesome, and certainly a great memory for you, and as well as for everybody that's listened. That is fantastic. That you found some camaraderie with him on Twitter. That's pretty cool. Well, let's get into some of these bowls, and what I mean. The philosophy is probably important for us to discuss here for myself and listeners out there. I would like you to explain what's different about handicapping the bowl games over just like, let's just say, the regular season in general.
Well, it's completely different. It's almost like a different sport. I mean, it's very. I would say the most similar is NFL preseason. It's mainly who's in and out of the lineup. As far as personnel, who wants to be there, who doesn't, motivation. And people are like, well, how do you quantify motivation? Well, it's actually gotten simpler to quantify motivation the last couple of years, because if a team isn't motivated, they're not going to not forget showing up. They just won't play. They'll opt out. I mean, the best players will hit the transfer portal. They'll enter early to the NFL draft. They just won't even play in the bowl game. Forget, going there and going through the motions. So, I mean, obviously it creates more work, but if you do the work, I think it can be very profitable, especially you can get in front of line moves that move 5, 6, 7. I had one last year, moved 14 points on me. So you can – you don't get that too much in the regular season on some of the major college football. So it's just motivate. And look, people might ask, well, how do you go about, handicapping motivation? I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, start off with the preseason expectations for a team. Did they achieve? Did they, overachieve? Did they underachieve? Do you think you'd be happy and, playing in the Weed Eater Bowl if you're like in Oklahoma? Or, are you a team like Kansas that hasn't been in a bowl game in 15 years? You would like to think that they're pretty excited to be in a bowl game. So, again, you don't have to be Einstein to figure some of this stuff out when you're handicapping it.
Well, Brad, you've been there a long time and it comes pretty quick to you when you're looking at it. But this is great information for people that probably aren't even thinking about some of those exact concepts that just feel like everyday type of handicapping in situations that you can put to real life. It's a holistic approach. I agree. It's very holistic. It's not power rated based. It's not necessarily efficiency based. And I think it's really important to kind of follow who's leaving, because that kind of tells you, like you said, is it a team that was supposed to make the college football playoffs, or is it a team that kind of snuck in and they just want to kick a Power 5 team's butt? It's a lot of little tells coming on when you're looking at this stuff. And that's what these shows are for us to try to dig in deep and kind of see what we can come up with and see what we can agree with. But, piggybacking on that, this is a question that I thought of to ask you today, because I think it's important. What can you tell our listeners on how or when to actually make these plays?
So you probably are a little bit late to the party now, as far as, if you're a guy like myself, get the absolute best number. though it's the numbers have been out for a week. So guys like myself, I've made 50 plus bets. So we've gotten after it.
Ooh.
You normally do not hear me say this though. If it's the normal regular season, I would say, well, you're kind of SOL. You're chasing, and chasing steam is very negative in the regular season. And I tweet this out every week. If you bet it open and you bet it close, it's a big difference, like 10%, which is everything.
Yes.
In the bowl season, this is relatively new. Because keep in mind, I mean, it wasn't that long ago when Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette were the first two to opt out of a bowl game. It was 2016. Now everyone opts out. But that has only been the case the last few years. And I went through and looked at it. Last year, like say, you were late to the party, but it's right before kickoff. And you're looking at the lines that move the most. And I use this even in the regular season. 3 points. Is 3 points or more? Well, we'll just use that. So you see that the line moved 3 points. So a team that opened a 4-point favorite is now a 7-point favorite. You say, hey, somebody knows something. I want to bet that. I'm going to tell you that the last couple of seasons, that's okay. You're 19-5 chasing that steam. Anything that moved 3 points or more. So we'll see what it does this year. If I get one more year of a sample size and it continues at a pace close to that, that might even be my philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
instead of, getting in early, because I'll tell you this, a lot of these bets, I'll probably have to play the other side as new information, arrives in the market. Guys, additional guys opt out, coaches leave and whatnot. I might even use that same approach where, I'll let everybody else do the work and I'll just wait and see, right before kickoff, and I'll be like everybody else and just bet then. I mean, because I'm spending a hell of a lot of time staring at a screen 16 hours a day for the next 3 weeks.
That's true. That is a lot of time, and that's life that you live, my man. And I admit I'm in front probably 10 to 12 hours a day. So it's just I got to get out and take a walk every once in a while. But hey, what I would say is at least the smaller teams, unless they have this amazing prospect that guys like Mel Kiper or any of the draft pundits would have up as a first or second round, you're usually safe if you kind of like that side and you expect maybe some pullouts or some holdouts from the Power 5 team. I kind of look at it that way, and I kind of look at unders might be the better, and this is just obviously in general, but unders might be the way you want to look at first, rather than taking it over and having a key guy screw you up your whole ticket, because a total that's put out by the odds makers, and when the market adjusts it can't go higher based upon what their information is. It can only go one way, can it, Brad?
So I totally agree with you with that latter point as far as the totals. I mean, again, goes back to NFL preseason. What are NFL preseason totals? They are lower than the regular season. So with all these opt-outs, and you got backup quarterbacks and the non-starters at the skill position, I think you're going to see vanilla game plans. This is in the weeds. Next Wednesday is signing day. And if you follow along with these coaches, they are not game planning right now. They are not at practice. They are flying all over the country, trying to get those last couple of kids in the recruiting class, or trying to at least keep the guys that they already have committed. So I expect to see a lot of vanilla game plans. So I couldn't agree with you more because of the opt-outs and because of you're just not getting those typical 15 practices before a bowl game. I think under is the way to go. What you originally said, I agree in theory, but I'm here to tell you, as far as the guys opting out, you're even seeing starting offensive tackles for Western Kentucky. And I mean, guys are opting out and not necessarily going to the pros. They're just hitting the transfer portal and seeing what their value is. So in theory, you are right. You would think you're more safe, and you have been the last couple of years. This year, all hell is broken loose on the transfer portal. I mean, there's over 1,000 guys in it in less than a week.
I know you're right. It is getting a little bit more hairy in general. And maybe my first statement was a little bit more true 2, 3, 4 years ago. But the funny situation, like Grayson McCall, he said he's transferring, but he might play the bowl game. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I heard on VSiN on Gill's show, I think it was a numbers game. I can't remember who said it. He said, that's like breaking up with your girlfriend, but keeping your Valentine's Day plans. It's absolutely makes no sense why someone would do that. I have to think he's not playing, but I'll tell you this, a lot of books pulled that line off. And it's just an example of what you said there. Some of the most average guys on other teams, and McCall's above that, but it will be transferring, and we can't even predict that. Is there a window that's like a day or two you think that's safe for some of these games?
Yeah, I would think, the 24 hours leading up to it would be okay. You would hope. I mean, I'll give you one just happened yesterday. Austin Reed, the Western Kentucky quarterback's been in the transfer portal for a week. All of a sudden, he took his name out of the portal. That line moved 4 or 5 points because he's going to return to Western Kentucky and somehow play. So I would like to think you're safe, but I don't know. And that's okay to say that. I think there's a lot of uncertainty. And again, I typically don't play back much stuff. I'm going to be playing back a lot of bets that I made, last week with new information. Lines have over moved, in my opinion. Don't be afraid to take two different positions on the same game.
Yeah, and what you said there is so interesting, and it made me wonder this point this week: do players go in the transfer portal just to leverage NIL money from anything? I mean, that's exactly what I would do if the team kind of expected me next year and I was pretty good. I would just go there to leverage some money, and that throws the market off, right? So, I mean,
there you go. You're thinking like Gen Z. I like that.
I do my best, man, and my wife keeps me on my toes. She's the one that's got the young heart. I don't. So go with that. But let's get into some of these awesome games then. And everything I wrote down, yeah, most of it's accurate. But we'll start out with the very first bowl game here. And that is Friday, December 16th, the Bahamas Bowl, Miami versus UAB. I see UAB like -10, -10.5 in some books, and the total, a pretty low total, Brad. I believe around 44. So, in this game, the Bahamas Bowl has kind of thrown me some curveballs in the past. I haven't been great at handicapping that personally from looking at my record, but maybe you got something good for me on this game. And I will say that at least Miami, I believe their coach is 3-0 in bowl games.
Yeah, so there's a little bit more stability on that side because UAB's with an interim coach here. He's not going to be, the permanent gig. That's going to Trent Dilfer next year. So there's a little bit of uncertainty there. I will say the players have rallied around the interim. They even sent an open letter to the administration. So I think they'll play hard, and I think they're clearly a superior team. But then again, that's why they're a double-digit favorite in this one. I'm not big on double-digit favorites. You look at it historically, last 15 years, double-digit favorites are pretty negative EV. It's about 45% in bowl season. So I'm not going to bet into that. I lean over. Weather can be a little dicey as far as the wind on the islands, but as we're recording this on Wednesday, the wind doesn't seem to be too bad. There's about a 20-25% chance of rain. I just think over. I think the UAB's run game has success. McBride's by far the best player in this game, the running back for UAB. And I also think for the first time in several games, Miami doesn't have to worry about the weather. There was a lot of MAC games this year. Those final 2-3 weeks of the season were really impacted by weather, multiple games.
Totally agree with you. I mean, UAB's numbers are ridiculously better, especially with a strength of schedule that's kind of equal on Sagarin.
Yep.
And that's the one I kind of use for strength of schedule. But UAB's got a plus 1.83 net yard per play advantage over the team right there. That's a lot of points right there. I usually attribute about 6.5 to 7 per yard. And this is obviously very general without looking at other things, but I think the spread is where it's at for a reason. The only thing scary is Chuck Martin, as I said, 3-0 against the spread in his bowl games. I remember when they beat San Jose State, and I was like, are you kidding me? San Jose State that just won their conference, I think they're maybe undefeated or something, but it was their first year they won their conference. They come and lose to Miami, Ohio. Was that 2 years ago or something?
That was Ball State against San Jose State.
That was Ball State. Okay, I knew it was a MAC team. I just wasn't sure. But yeah, you got to be careful.
They almost beat Mississippi State. I remember specifically about 5-6 years ago as about a 17-point underdog, and they should have won the game. They were clearly the right team, the side, and they missed a field goal late. Would have beaten an SEC team, Mississippi State.
There you go. And I looked at the under because of the wind, but not, if the wind's not going to be there, then yeah, I would be very concerned about that. I have no play on this game. Probably just going to enjoy the first one without any sweats.
That's good.
Let's move on. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to bet all these games. They have to put a line on them.
He couldn't have said it better. Just because it's on, and just because I'm saying, oh, I got 50 plus bets, that doesn't mean that they're all big bets. I like, I'm a nut job. I like having action, and I like, but most of 85% of the time I got the best of the numbers, so that's why I have it. But generally speaking, a lot of these games, there's even too much uncertainty for me.
Well, that's why you have your VIP section, Brad, that has been kicking some ass. So congratulations on that part. And it's great advice. Just because I'm betting a ton of games, I'm the one getting the openers. It does, and I try to send it out personally for me. But it's like that doesn't mean that you have to have that many bets. Brad has a certain exclusive that he can give out lines that aren't moved by himself when he's making these plays. So that works out for his clients, and you're doing very well. So congrats on that. Let's move on to the Cure Bowl. Troy versus UTSA. UTSA, I have +1. I see money coming in on Troy a little bit. Total about 54.5 was what I wrote down. 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. This is in Orlando, Florida, Exploria Stadium. I kind of think that both of these teams' motivation level, and of course, here we are capping motivation. We have to. Medium low, I put. I don't see. I mean, they both won their conference, in my opinion. Now they get to go on vacation a little bit. This just made me think back to when San Jose State lost to Ball State. It's like, they won their conference. They're on vacation. What does this bowl game really mean to them? I think both teams are kind of in that same position. But yet, Jeff Traylor, great coach. UTSA's offense has just been. It just blows my mind. I think they wish they had that Houston game over again. Man, did Houston disappoint. But I thought they could have won that game. I remember from the beginning of the season, Troy's got the harder strength of schedule, ranking 92nd to UTSA's 123rd. Troy's got the 0.48 net yard per play advantage. But man, both teams are top 10 in all the red zone categories. UTSA's defense ranks 128th in success rate and giving up explosive plays. That's where I think Troy might have the advantage here because UTSA gives up the explosive play. They're not all that good, so they play kind of like a press, and Troy is 12th. I mean, Troy's defense has really got them through. I keep almost betting Troy. I'm not going to lie, but something keeps me off of Brad. Maybe you can explain.
No, I think Troy is probably the sharper side here. My numbers have it close to this. In fact, they lean a little bit UTSA here with the latest line movement, but I'm more towards the over because of what you mentioned, the efficiency of the red zone. I also think UTSA's defense is a little overrated. Keep in mind, down the stretch, they faced like 3 straight games where they faced a backup quarterback. And Troy offensively left a lot to be desired for most of the season. This is a defense that carried the team most of the season, but last 3 weeks for them, they started getting the offense going there. So it's a lean for me on the over. It's not one of my favorite bets of the bowl season, but that's certainly where I expect this one. As far as motivation, I'll say this. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think if both teams would have played like a Power 5 team in a bowl game, these would have been 2 clear play on teams. They would have been motivated. I think they're legitimately good, both teams. So missed opportunity that they get to face each other. I wanted to see them against a Power 5 opponent.
No doubt. I did too. And this segment's being brought to you by Betfred Sports. Check out Betfred Sports. Use the promo code odds23 for $250 in free bets. Terms, conditions, location apply. Let's move on to the next bowl. We got the Fenway Bowl. We're moving into Saturday, Brad, December 17th. And that annoying NFL is going to be kind of bugging us a little bit that day because the NFL decided to throw some Saturday games this week, but this is the most mind-blowing, interesting game for me because it's not often where you see the coach move from one team in Louisville to the team they're playing in the bowl game. It's so Satterfield moves from Louisville to Cincinnati. I actually think it's a weird move, but maybe a good one because he wasn't that well liked, especially in the media. Now he can kind of start at Cincinnati and try to leave off where Fickle left. But this is this is fun because it's in a baseball stadium. It's at Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts, as you know. I had to put Cincinnati's motivation kind of as medium low if I was guessing it, because Coach Fickle, being gone, it puts them in a pickle, right? So Fickle in a pickle. Louisville's motivation's high. I think that they are probably looking at themselves like, our coach just left for this freaking team. F them, man. I mean, if I was this team, I know I'd be rallying right now and trying to show that he should have never left. Now, the problem is that Malik Cunningham's not going to play. And the reason this line is still very close to pick 'em, Louisville's -1. It's a total of 40. It's because Louisville's that bad without Malik Cunningham. He was pretty much one of the biggest line probably values to his team, minus Grayson McCall, I would say. I would say he means a lot to Louisville. Cincinnati, coming in, I still lean to Louisville, but this is another game that I didn't make a play on. And this total is so low, Brad. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I lean towards Louisville. I mean, Cincinnati's got a lot of guys opting out, a couple tight ends, a couple wide receivers. Both teams are playing with backup quarterbacks. Keep in mind, Ben Bryant's injured. He's out. I did play the under. It's moved 4.5 points. It's getting to the point of no return, not just because you have 2 interim coaches, 2 backup quarterbacks, guys opting out, but you mentioned it's Fenway Park, and the weather forecast isn't necessarily great. At least early in the process, there was expected to be some significant wind. I think it's eased up a little bit, but it's going to be cold. The field dynamics are weird. Both teams are going to be on the same sideline. This is NFL exhibition type stuff here. So I would say at the current numbers, maybe just a lean on Louisville, but even a guy like myself, if you're betting anything other than pizza money here, I mean, old tip of the cap to you. You got a little bit more guts than I do. I just put a little bit bet on the under, and that was it. Called it a day.
And sometimes you can kind of see their motivation in the first, 6 to 10 plays. I mean,
That's
if you want to live bet,
bowl games, if you're scared, live bet these things because they're isolated. They're all on national TV. And wait a possession or two. I mean, you're going to see who wants to be there and who doesn't. So that's great advice by you.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Let's move on to the next bowl then. We have the Celebration Bowl. Jackson State versus NC Central. And I got to check the line. I think it's still around the 16.5 to 17.
NC Central took some money today, 14.5.
Oh, it's down to 14.5. Okay. It's funny. This screen's not showing it, probably because of the FCS. But, I thought that you might have a little bit more information on this game than myself. I'm going to be completely honest. I can't remember the last time I bet a non-FBS game, Brad. And the only thing I can think of is Deion Sanders, man. And what does that mean to this line? Do you think the players care about what he's doing? I think he earned a Power 5 job. I mean, easily, just from what he's done. I don't know how he'll do there yet. I have to assume that he's going to get a lot of great recruits. But that's besides the point. We care about this line. Is anybody betting it? And did you bet it?
Yeah, I bet NC Central. I think Jackson State obviously has a far superior talent edge. They've had that in all their games this year. It's the main reason why they're 12-0. I don't think it's necessarily a bunch of scheme things and X's and O's that Deion's dialing up. It's just he's got much better players. The stats say that. You look at margin of victory, yards per game margin, and whatnot. Here's what has me on NC Central. Number one, a lot of distractions with Deion. Now he's going to coach. All the players are going to play. They want to finish strong, but he's still got a lot of split time with Colorado. He's still recruiting with Colorado. A lot of these players, this is it for them at Jackson State. They're heading with Deion to Colorado, so I don't know what their frame of mind is. NC Central and a lot of the SWAC and MEAC schools have been disrespected. At least that's their sense that I get from a lot of these coaches and players from the dog and pony show of Deion Sanders. And I'll say this, there might be something to it that the distractions have hurt Jackson State because they haven't covered their last 3 games. They're 0-3 against the number of their last 3 after they were just pulverizing teams at the start of the season. And, I'm not a big fan of the X's and O's for him. I go back to last year's Celebration Bowl where they were a double-digit favorite and lost the game outright, and it wasn't close. I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but anything above 14, I can only look at NC Central.
Well, there you go. Sagarin's number, because he does have numbers on this, is 9. So, he pays attention more than I do to this. So, it just kind of goes to show you that, and his numbers are a little more condensed than mine in general. Anyway, it's always been like that for Jeff. But I think that there's only one way if you're going to bet this game. So it sounds like you made a play on it. And I don't disagree with it. I think there's just a lot of distraction now. And is he taking any players with him, Brad?
Oh, he's taking a ton. For starters, his son, which is one of the best quarterbacks at the FCS level, Shadur Sanders, probably be the starter for Colorado next year. He's already named him the starter. We'll see how that works out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then there'll be some other guys like Travis Hunter, who was the #1 recruit in the country last year that he somehow got to go to Jackson State. A lot of the guys will. We'll see. I just think there's too much distractions there for me to want to forget, wanting to bet. Laying more than 2 touchdowns, no thank you. That's why I like the dog.
I mean, this almost feels like a money line situation too. If you want to throw some pizza money on the money line, I mean, why not? I mean, if it's that many questions, it just makes the plus money that much more important is the way I look at it. So interesting stuff on that one. So let's move on to the next bowl. We have, and this one is wild too, BYU versus SMU. SMU is minus, oh God, this thing's been all over the place. Is it 3.5 again?
Yeah,
I'm pulling up
3.5 again.
Yep, it's down to 3.5 again. So this was 5.5 when the Jaren Hall news kind of came out. And Kalani Sitake is, he's wishy-washy at best right now, I guess, about this whole thing. 3.5. The total's still pretty high at 64. I believe this total was higher in the 70s, if I remember right.
74.
And, Jesus, yeah, there you go. 10-point move on this total. Brad was probably part of that. Jaren Hall, I have to think he's not playing. But even if Jaren Hall doesn't play, I don't know the drop-off really. I know the second string and third string has not played much this year. I did look at that. But this is just another situation where you wonder, is SMU all that motivated? Is BYU going to try to play a tough game here? I'm probably staying away. Maybe you got something better than me.
Lean towards BYU. You're pretty much getting onto my point is I don't think Jaren Hall is worth as much as the spread as what this movement has. I mean, this was close to pick. If not, the BYU, even some spots very early in the process, was like a 1-point favorite. So, today's move, from everything that I can collect, isn't saying that Jaren Hall is definitely going to play. I agree with you. I think he's more doubtful than questionable or probable. I just think there might have been some guys like myself that said, you know what, the BYU shouldn't be getting 5.5 here, even with a backup quarterback. So I thought the line moved a little too much. Anything above 3 would be a lean on BYU, but like most of these bowl games, a lot of uncertainty. Make a bet, be confident in your numbers, but also, maybe watch it, watch the game and maybe try to get off of it after a series or two to see what the motivation looks like for both teams. I don't know until I see it. Now, I will say SMU, Mordecai will play, but their best wide receiver is opting out. So I'm not sure that how highly motivated they are right now.
That's so true. And it doesn't mean that BYU's not motivated if Jaren Hall doesn't play, because this kid's auditioning for the next year. Maybe there's a rally cry. Some people just think that just because someone leaves, it's not that situation. It's the situation where, yeah. And that's something to remember. I think it's very important to know that these kids are trying to earn starting positions, and they've been working hard all week. BYU's got a 0.63 net yard per play advantage. Neither defense is good. I think both. But yeah, the QBR 92 for SMU, opponent QBR, and 116 for BYU, and so that's why the total was so high. I sure as hell ain't taking the over without Jaren Hall, no matter who's playing quarterback. But I do think that this could be a live betting situation as well. Let's move on to the next game, the LA Bowl. You got Fresno State versus Washington State. Now, this went back to 3.5. Now, here's the thing. When this opened, I saw Fresno State as a 4-point dog, and I laughed, Brad. When I saw that, I laughed. I took Fresno immediately. Yep. Now, this thing moved far, but it actually just moved a little farther, which kind of frustrated me. I have a small buyback for a third at the +3 at Washington State because it kind of passed my 2.5. But then, lo and behold, another receiver just decided to hold out. The third best receiver for Washington State just put his transfer in. You wonder how many more kids are going to do it. I'm in a much better position than others might be. I see some bets coming in on Fresno State. But Washington State, it's easy to say that their motivation could be low, but they're, I mean, it's not like they're a big Power 5 team, and they don't want to get embarrassed by Fresno State. They were a feisty team. They beat my Badgers and in Camp Randall. You know, I thought they gave USC a little bit of a run for the money for a little while, and they have some decent wins. You know, I put the number at 2.5, and these next receivers could be just fine. I would lean Washington State at 3.5. What are your thoughts?
I would still lay it with Fresno. It's just not, the cluster injuries not cluster injuries, but basically cluster opt-outs at wide receiver. A couple of their best defensive players are out. More important to me, both offense and defensive coordinators are out. So I don't, the shorthanded staff there to say the least. Now the head coach is going to call the defensive plays. I'm not sure that he's qualified to call the offensive plays now that the offensive coordinator took the North Texas job. So to me, there's just way too much uncertainty on that side. I think Fresno's focused. This is it for Jake Haener. You talk about an audition for the next level. This is the game for him. And I think generally speaking, Fresno, because he missed several games, their full season data, sample size and stats are kind of, skewed a little bit towards the bad because they didn't have great performances when he was out. Since he's returned, 8 straight wins for him. So I like Fresno here. And this is one where it's steamed a lot, but I go back to the last 2 years, games that have moved 3 or more points, even if you're betting right before kickoff, still 19-5 against the spread. If you're betting, the closing line.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the steam is correct, is what you're saying there. In these situations, in most of these situations, there's a few outliers, but Jeff Tedford 5-5 ATS in bowl games. Jake Dicker's
performance in a bowl game last year was abysmal. They lost outright to Central Michigan, got dominated in the game.
Yeah, that threw me. I probably was on the wrong side of that.
I was.
Both of us. Fresno only 220 miles away from SoFi Stadium. So I mean, you're going to get some Fresno. I know Wazoo travels well, so don't forget that. They always got their flag on College game day too, and they have a very loyal fan base there. But Fresno's only 220 miles away, so I would even give Fresno a small advantage home on this situation here. Let's move to the Lending Tree Bowl, the Southern Miss versus Rice, and I better bring up the numbers before I botch it. 6.5. Okay, I wrote 7. Total is 45.5 here, Brad. Why don't you get started on this game? It's kind of one of those. I believe these two teams were kind of rivals back in the day. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, they were. Rice upset Southern Miss last year. So, they were rivals in Conference USA. Obviously, they're in opposite conferences now with Southern Miss going to the Sun Belt. Speaking of Sun Belt's a better conference than Conference USA. So I know Southern Miss didn't play the strongest strength of schedule, but and I know Rice statistically says that they played a stronger schedule, but I think the Sun Belt, is stronger than Conference USA on a team in and team out basis. I like Southern Miss, generally speaking. I think they're underrated as a program. Goes back to even last year. They had 10 different guys take a snap under center last year. They were as banged up as any team in the country at quarterback. They've had 5 different guys take a snap this year. And somehow they found a way to cover 9 of their 12 games. Rice, speaking of quarterback, their first string guy has not been taken. He's not been practicing. He missed the last couple of games of the season and still wasn't practicing as of Monday. And their offense really took a turn for the worse without him in the lineup those last 2.5 games. And for me, I've been betting on Southern Miss all year. Started with their season win total. I'm going to continue to ride them here.
Yeah, I think Rice is kind of banged up as well.
Yeah.
I know that I put motivation for both of them quite high. I put it both as very high motivation. Mobile, Alabama, not far for Southern Miss, 97 miles away. Southern Miss University to Mobile, Alabama. Every bowl game, I do a little MapQuest thing to.
I like that.
First bowl game for both coaches. Strength schedule's close. Southern Miss 99, Rice is 90th. Southern Miss has a 0.45 net yard per play advantage. The best unit on the field, Southern Miss's defense here, Brad. And I think that's why you see the larger spread, but I agree with it. I'm close to making a play in Southern Miss, even though my power ratings kind of disagree. My power ratings have it like -5. I think with the issues with Rice right now, I think the favorite's correct. So I might be on this game. And like you said, they were a moneymaker for me this year. So that's good.
I'm on it. Southern Miss, one of my favorite plays, at least the first 10, 15 bowl games.
All right. Well, there you go. Southern Miss -6.5. I wonder if that goes down or up, but I'm confident below the 7 right now. Let's move on to Florida versus Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl. Oregon State is -10.5. The total is 52. And I better double check this one too, Brad. I mean, when Richardson opted out, this is like them going to Vegas, getting split aces against the 6, my man. It's double down city here. Split them and hit them. I think that Oregon State is a for sure easy favorite in this. And I hated Florida this year's defense. They were just absolutely overrated. I think they got overrated just because that first game against Utah and how they kind of snuck that win. I sometimes like to take out the first games from my numbers. Sometimes it's just so random in so many situations. But I will say that Oregon State's tight end is sitting out as well. But this is a big spread. And, you wonder if, Napier's kids are going to be somewhat motivated in this situation. What do you think about it being this high at the 10.5? Where's your thoughts?
Yeah, I certainly lean Florida. I mean, without Richardson, I'm not a big Anthony Richardson guy. He's a very questionable passer. So they're down to their third string guy, but I like their third string guy. I'm familiar with the kid. He's a 4-star recruit that originally went to Ohio State. I've watched him in multiple spring games. I think he's all right. So Jack Miller's his name. I don't think the downgrade is probably as big as what the market's treating it. Now, Florida's missing a bunch of other guys. I mean, it's like a dozen guys. So, but I still think it's very tough for me to lay points for double digits when you got a Pac-12 team versus an SEC team. Also, I'm not a big trends guy anymore. You asked me 5 years ago, I probably was. I was a little square in that regard. But I did find it interesting. Billy Napier 17-3 against the spread as an underdog, going back to Louisiana Lafayette. He's even 5-0 this year. So I don't know if he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He is kind of a gambling guy. He knows the spread. He's very familiar with it. He follows me on Twitter. It's just not because of that. I've heard some other people that are close to him. He's on the up and up when it comes to that. So and the other thing is, Oregon State's been great against the spread. I mean, they're one of the best teams in the country, if not the best, as far as 10-2 against the number. But man, laying double digits with a quarterback, Ben Gulbranson, who they don't even trust. I mean, they barely threw the ball even in the Oregon game that they found a way to win somehow. So I don't see it. Give me Florida.
All right. And Billy Napier is probably going to be happy once he watches this episode. Since he follows you on Twitter,
Yeah.
He's going to be able to see it. So unfortunately for Billy Napier, he is 1-3 against the spread in bowl games. So that is a small sample size. It's a small sample size. I know. I like your 17-3 as a dog. That's that one's a little bit more prominent here. But you think that Billy Napier's himself's going to be motivated, even though the team might not be. Yeah, I wrote Florida's motivation is low, but I don't trust.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's why it's 10. I mean, if they're motivated, this line's probably 3. And Richardson's playing, and everybody's playing. Oregon State's 3, not 10.
Yeah. I know Oregon State's gonna have high motivation though. I mean, you get to be an SEC team, so it's we'll call it the opt-out bowl in this one. So we'll see who else opt-outs before we make a play. But I do agree. This is a big spread, and it's disrespectful. I kind of like fading the Power 5 or SEC Big Ten if they're favorites and they're not motivated. But if they're dogs, that could be a complete different question here. But yeah, there's a laundry list of guys. Torrance, their offensive lineman. Braun, their offensive lineman. Black, their linebacker. Yeah, it's just quite a few guys transferring, but I believe ETN's still there, so that's interesting, at least for now. Florida's backup only did throw the ball 14 times, and that was against a bad FCS school, so that is interesting.
That kid's out. That kid's out. It's the third string guy, Jack Miller.
Oh, it's Miller. Okay, my bad.
He hasn't played at all. He was going to be the backup, but he hurt his thumb at the beginning of the season. Hasn't played at all. Hadn't taken a snap in the game.
Yeah, and I'll say
I know a lot of people are against me on this one, but I can't come around. I still, even with all those opt-outs, there is a difference in a caliber of athlete between the Pac-12 and the SEC. I'm telling you.
That is true. And Bell, yeah,
Look
you're right.
no further than Utah couldn't beat Florida. The flag bearer of the conference somehow couldn't win that game, and I bet Utah.
Hey, we're throwing that one out. Come on,
All
Brad.
right.
Yeah, Ben Gulbertson, man, you can't trust him that well, especially late double digits. Ooh. I mean, if you think about it, just like, man, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I'm betting -10 against Florida. Yeah, the Pac-12 schools kind of come back down to earth a little bit. Their second and third guys here that are first sophomores are probably itching to play. So think about it like that. Frisco Bowl, Boise State versus North Texas. North Texas +10, total 56.5. I believe that's where it's at. 10.5, actually, you see here at DK. 59. Total went up to 59. So those are the live odds right now here. So with this one, Brad, I mean, North Texas, I think they're kind of it's weird. This is like a home game for them, isn't it? The Frisco Bowl, it's like across the city. You know, it's very close. So, you know, they're going to have people there. I wonder, like, what the kids think about it. It's not like they get to travel. Is it more of a business type trip for them? So looking at the motivation's kind of interesting. I say medium high motivation for Boise State, though, because I know they got Green as their quarterback, but, you know, he kind of came in for Bachmeier and did well. I just think that, you know, he's coming in and he's going to want to win this game. I think how much are you going to give North Texas? Maybe a point, maybe a point and a half. I don't know, for home field advantage. Boise State's got the harder strength of schedule, 98th to 122nd for North Texas. Boise State's got a little bit of a net yard per play advantage. I think that probably is a little skewed because, you know, they played with that offensive coordinator in Bachmeier that was screwing stuff up at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
Boise State has the best unit on the field with their defense. So that's, I think, what I'm concentrating on. Yet, you know, you still have a big spread. My power rating has Boise State -12.25, though. So my power rating says it's slightly short, Brad. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I lean towards Boise here. Different team with the Dirt Cutters, their offense coordinator, Green at quarterback compared to what they were the first 4 weeks of the season. North Texas, you know, fired their coach, so they got an interim. Generally speaking, interims are negative EV. I think it's like 30 and 35 going back to 2005 against the spread. If you're betting on interim coaches, I think it's going to be even more negative moving forward because interim coaches, substitute teacher effect. What happens now? You hit the portal. I think there's more chance now. North Texas, not a bunch of players hit the portal in this instance, but again, Phil Bennett's not getting the job. They just hired their guy. I know you're playing close to home, but I just don't see it. You mentioned that Green will be motivated. He's a Texas kid, so I do think he's motivated. I looked at North Texas down the stretch. UAB, UTSA, two of the better teams in Conference USA, got pummeled in both games by 3 touchdowns. Boise State's as good as those two teams, so give me the Broncos. I'll lay the doubles.
There you go, and you can get a hunt for a 10 here. Maybe you can get a little bit better if you get a bunch of public money on thinking it's a home field game for them. So no need to rush. Let's just take a look at it. But I agree with you. My power ratings agree too. So we'll look at that one. Let's round the corner here to Monday, December 19th. So on Monday, we're watching college football, Brad. I love it. Myrtle Beach Bowl, UConn versus Marshall. Marshall is -10. Total is 40.5. Another very low total. This is at Brooks Stadium in Conway, South Carolina. I wrote UConn's motivation is kind of medium or medium high. I think they're excited to get into a bowl game with Mora. I know it's fun to party in Myrtle Beach. I've never been there. I've heard good things about Myrtle Beach for kids, but I think Marshall's motivation is medium low. I think that it's kind of a bad opponent, and I think Marshall probably wanted something a little bit better for the season, but it's only upside for UConn. I like UConn's motivation more than anything. I know Jim Mora's 2-2 against the spread. Marshall does have a 0.87 yards per play advantage, but man, the Huskies as a dog this year, beating teams like Boston College, beating Liberty. They beat Fresno without Haener, so that's a little bit interesting to throw out there. Even though my power ratings have Marshall as a pretty big favorite here, I still lean to UConn. Haven't made a play yet. What are your thoughts?
I lean towards Marshall, and I agree with you that I think Connecticut's sky high in this game, and they have the motivational edge. I just don't think they're very good. Even though they won a bunch of games, I thought a lot of it was fluky. They got outgained by FIU, got outgained by UMass. Those are two of the worst teams, if not the two worst teams in college football. They got outgained in those games. I mean, they're getting outgained by 85 yards per game. Marshall leaves a lot to be desired when they're not focused. I mean, they get beat. I mean, BG beat them. Louisiana beat them when they were a big favorite. But man, if you tell me I'm going to get their B game even, I think they're just far and away the superior team here. So I lean Marshall. Not one of my favorite bets. It's always not ideal to lay double digits when you got a total of 40. But that's where I'm at here. My power rankings have it 13. That's a pretty big disparity for me this time.
Let's go to Myrtle Beach and see if these kids party, Brad. We'll
Yeah.
go hunting around at night and have a
Those
good time.
days have come and gone.
Same with me, my man. Marshall's defense ranks second in success rate, number one in defensive EPA. So I'll tell you right now.
I don't know how Connecticut scores. I mean, I'm surprised they get more than 14.
All right. Well, I had a lean on UConn. I'll stick with my lean, but maybe you took me away from the window. So like I said, we don't have to be betting all these games. Tuesday, December 20th, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, San Jose State versus Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan plus 3.5. It was 4.5. The total is 54. I find it interesting that it didn't get the 3. I will admit that I'm an early player on Eastern Michigan at the 4.5. Yep. This is at Albert Stadium in Boise, Idaho. So here's what I wrote. San Jose State's motivation has to be extremely low because they go there anyway, during the year. It's not exactly a reward to go play in Boise State. Maybe the kids were assaulted there or something, is what I said before on another podcast. Eastern Michigan, their motivation is probably low, but maybe they show up this game. The MAC has been just kind of crazy in bowl games before it. We always say the MAC is such a bad conference, yet they always show up in the bowl game. Eastern Michigan's Chris Creighton, 3-1 against the spread in bowl games. Brett Brennan only has won that one bowl game, 0-1 against the spread, Brad. I give San Jose State credit for getting there, but man, I think that some of their wins was due to their plus 12 turnover ratio. They rank 5th in positive turnover ratio for San Jose State. They do have a plus 0.82 yards per play advantage, but I'd argue that the Eagles had a better finish to their season. They won 4 of the last 5 games. San Jose State lost 2 of their last 3. I'm not impressed by San Jose State's wins or their strength of schedule. My power rings have San Jose State just by 1 or 2 points. So I played Eastern Michigan, and I would play them again at 3.5. Let's see if you agree or disagree.
You get agreement with me. I played the 4.5. I think anything above 3 is worth a play here on Eastern. I think they're pretty motivated. They haven't won a bowl game since 1987. They've been close under Chris Creighton. You mentioned the 3 covers. They weren't close last year. They got crushed. But the other 3 games, it basically came down to the wire, and they covered all 3. They've won 8 games for the first time in a season since 1987. I don't know what happened to San Jose State. They failed to cover the spread their last 6 games by an average of 11 points per game. They just were falling short consistently. It was about the same time they unfortunately had, one of their players passed away. So I don't know if that really impacted team chemistry in that locker room. But you're right. I don't think they're very excited. I think Eastern Michigan is to get that first bowl win. So I like the Eagles here.
All right. We got some agreement on this one. Jonathan Tyler asked for this on podcast. Absolutely, Jonathan. You'll be hearing this question on it tomorrow morning, every morning on Thursday when this baby comes out. Let's move on to the Boca Raton Bowl, Toledo versus Liberty. And Liberty is at plus 5. The total is at 54. And so this is at FAU Stadium in Boca Raton, Florida, which is actually a pretty nice destination for these kids. Which makes me scratch my head a little bit. Toledo, Ohio kid going to a nice destination. So, they won their conference there, and their quarterback was questionable for a long time. I was trying to set myself up a middle. I had Ohio plus 4.5, and I had Toledo to win the conference at 4-1. But obviously, I just got one side of that. But either way, can't complain about that. I hope that Liberty shows up here. I know they lost Hugh Freeze. And I think they have a good coach coming in, though, don't they, Brad?
Yeah, Jamie Chadwell is a really good hire. So the future's bright for Liberty. I'm not sure that the immediate future's bright as far as this bowl game. Are they going to show up? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. They didn't show up the last 3 games of the season. They failed to cover the spread by 29 points per game. I mean, they lost their last 3 games outright as a double-digit favorite in all 3 games. I mean, that New Mexico State final, Liberty was a 24-point favorite and lost the game by 35. 59-point ATS loss. I looked it up. It's the worst performance in any game in college football in 4 years. It's in the top 10 of any since 1990. Since 1990, one of the top 10 worst performances in college football. What are you talking? 10,000 plus games there. So, really, really bad. I didn't like. I'm not sure it gets turned around for the bowl game with an interim coach. I would bet Toledo a lot, but I don't think Jason Candle is very good. I think he stinks, honestly. Even though I'm right there with you, I bet him to win the MAC. They should win the MAC every year. Look at their recruiting classes. Look at the talent disparity. They literally should win the MAC 4 out of 5 years, and they don't. They're 0-4 in bowl games the last 4 years with them, and they've lost 3 of them outright as a touchdown plus favorite. He's good at that. He's done it 7 times in the last 2 years, losing outright as a touchdown plus favorite more than anybody in the country. So I lean Toledo just because I didn't like what I saw Liberty down the stretch, but it's not a big bet because I do not trust Jason Candle.
You shouldn't trust him. 1-4 against the spread in bowl games, and he's burned our tickets in the past. I think that how the hell did Liberty get Chadwell? I still don't understand.
They have a lot of money. They have a ton of money.
I guess so. I guess so, because leaving, it felt like almost like a downgrade going from the Chanticleers to Liberty, maybe, or at horizontal at best. But
he's getting paid 4x, 4 times as much at Liberty.
Jesus, I thought he'd go to the Power 5. I'm not. That's what I figured. I guess maybe his defense. I guess maybe there's games without McCall. I don't know. But I thought he was the next coach to be hired. I thought he'd be going to South Carolina a year or 2 ago, personally. So that's what threw me off. State strength schedule's equal. 128 for Toledo, 121 for Liberty. But I do have a play on this game, Brad. Toledo's got a 0.27 net yard per play advantage. Toledo is sloppy. 116th in turnover ratio at -8. That's where it really happens for them. But both defenses are actually solid. They both rank top 10 in success rate. They both rank top 21 in EPA. I took the under, my man. I took under 54.
I'm gonna write that one down because I have not looked at that yet.
Yeah, I think that the points come at a premium. One thing I will say is when Toledo did play Ohio in the bowl game, I know Ohio did not have their starting quarterback, but their defense was pretty swarming, and that's the unit I can trust a lot more is their defense. So I love the under in this one. I play for a few stars at least, and lean Liberty at +5 for sure.
I will look into that. One thing I will say, both teams' quarterbacks situation's been banged up here down the stretch, so keep an eye on that as we get closer to the bowl game. Who's actually going to start a quarterback for both teams?
Yeah, make sure you. Yep. Huge point. That's going to change possibly. This is still 54, which shocks me. This thing should be 50.5, in my opinion. So, I would definitely look towards the under for all you listeners out there. Let's move on to the next bowl here. We have on Wednesday, December 21st, moving up to Christmas, New Orleans Bowl, South Alabama versus Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky +8. The total on this one's close to the same as before, about 53.5. This is at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. So this, South Alabama creeped up on me, Brad. I did not see them coming. They were a very solid team. And obviously being this big of a favorite, 7-8 points, this moved down to 4.5. I said the wrong spot because, like you mentioned, the quarterback's coming back for West Kentucky. But still, 4.5 point is a pretty decent spread here in a bowl game against, Western Kentucky that's been good the last few years. And you have a South Alabama team, I think that's coming in very motivated. The total actually went up to 56 when the announcement came up. So my apologies for saying the wrong thing. What are your thoughts on this game, Brad?
Yeah, I like South Alabama, even with the quarterback coming back. How locked in is he? He was just in the transfer portal, for a week or so. And all of a sudden, he's coming back. I guess it was money or whatnot. How money work out for Texas A&M's program this year as far as being the motivator for a team and players. So this is a little bit hidden in the weeds, but Western Kentucky's got a couple of offensive linemen out. receiver out, a kicker out, some players. I mean, I know you don't think a kicker is worth anything, but wait till you miss a kick or two. Then it was worth something, wasn't it? You're right about South Alabama. What is their bad performance of the season? I mean, their 2 losses are to, UCLA and Troy by a combined 5 points.
Right.
I mean, this team is rock solid each and every week. They won 10 games. Their defense is the best probably, Western Kentucky's faced all year, at least one of the best. I like South Alabama here to roll. I mean, even with the quarterback back, I was thankful that he announced his comeback because I didn't want to lay 8, but I'll lay 4, especially if I don't think he's locked in and he hasn't been practicing with the team.
Yeah, great points. You're really moving me towards this position. Tyson Helton, Western Kentucky, 1-1-1 against the spread in bowl games. Strength schedule is actually pretty close with these teams, 111 to 129. Western Kentucky does have the 0.34 net yards per play, but South Alabama's defense ranking 16th in success rate, 12th in defensive EPA is the best unit on the field here. I like betting on teams with the best unit in the field. Yep. I agree with you. I'm writing this one down. I'll probably be running to the window after this. Let's move on to the next game, December 22nd, Thursday, the Armed Forces Bowl, Air Force versus Baylor. Now, I wrote 6.5, but this is down to 5.5.
Yeah.
Total's 49. I'm just going to say I'm on Baylor, and I'm guessing you're on the opposite.
No, I'm on Baylor. I don't agree with the move. I got to see if it was a player opt out. I know the service academies are actually really good in bowl games, but I don't see it here. Air Force played a very weak schedule. This is the first time they're an underdog all season. So they are actually taking a major step up in class. I'm Mr. Pro Air Force. That was my biggest season win total bet was Air Force over. They won that bet. I should be feeling good about them. I didn't like what I saw from Air Force most of the season. I had to, the fact that I had to sweat out that bet was ridiculous, I thought, because I was betting over 7.5 wins. And they were favoring all 12 games. That should have been a non-sweat whatsoever. I think Baylor, I trust Dave Aranda on the defensive side of the ball to have a game plan to stop the option. I know they lost their defensive coordinator. He fired him. He'll take over the play calling for this bowl game. I just think Baylor's underrated. They're 6-6. Maybe their record's not good. I think they're still a borderline top 25 team. Lay it if you play it. Hopefully it continues to go down because I already got a bet on Baylor. I'll have a big bet on Baylor.
There you go. That's conviction right there. I'm glad you're on my side because when it went down, I'm like, well, maybe Brad moved it, but apparently not.
Nope.
We're both on Baylor here, and it's exactly what you said. I love Dave Aranda. I loved his time when he was the Badger defensive coordinator. I thought it was a great hire from LSU to take him away and actually pay him 7 figures, like LSU's got that money. And obviously when he went to Baylor, look what he did at Baylor last year. He's kind of in a rebuild type team this year, and they still did pretty well. Their defense was kind of shaky against the pass, but man, like you said, you think Dave Aranda is not going to figure out the triple option in 3 freaking weeks? I hate triple option teams in 3 weeks. That's why I always fade them like in the beginning when they don't have stuff going on, or when teams have a bye week and they have extra time to practice against a triple option. So great call there. Also, strength of schedule, like you mentioned, Baylor
huge disparity.
15th to 116th, man. It is massive. And even with that difference, Baylor still has a 0.34 net yard per play advantage. And my power ratings have minus 7.75. So, I mean, everything agrees with Baylor. So, well, there you go. We line up. I don't understand the move myself. And I do know Air Force is good in bowl games. It's because their motivation is always high. They always get to play a Power 5 team. Not in this situation. Baylor's getting ready for next year. Don't see a ton of opt-outs yet for Baylor, too. So I find that interesting. So
Agreed.
That's looking good for Baylor. Me and Brad are on that side. Let's move on to Friday, December 23rd, the Gasparilla Bowl. Missouri versus Wake Forest. Wake Forest is -1. The total is 60.5. Brad, I got to admit that I almost made a play on Missouri. Just looking at the line, it kind of looked weird. And then, I don't know, I got off it. I mean, you know what? I can wait this one out. I want to see what you have on this one and see if we line up.
Yeah, so I bet Missouri plus 3.5. Love that bet. Obviously, I'd still lean that way on Missouri. Something's wrong with Wake Forest. I mean, they lost 4 of their last 5 games. And you're thinking, their schedule is tough. They were favored in all 5 of those games and still lost 4 of them. There's whispers of Sam Hartman transfer portal. I think he'll play this game, but I think this is it for him. Man, you get the ACC versus the SEC. I'm taking the SEC. You don't believe me? Ask South Carolina against Clemson. Give me the SEC all day, all night. I think Missouri. You looked at Missouri when they beat Arkansas, and I look at this. Hey, are the teams excited? They were pumped to get the bowl eligibility. They celebrated. They got a couple of opt-outs, but I just think they played the tougher schedule. Give me the Tigers here. They went outright.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and that's kind of where I was going. And it sucked. I missed the line. You got 3.5 quicker than I did. Then I actually got to it, and congrats to you on that. That was a wonderful little play you got there going on. Wake's wrong, and I'll tell you right now. When the Sam Hartman news came, he was coming back. I was like, "Hey, you serious?" Because me and you both talked about earlier this season how we went to the kiosk and slammed the under.
Tickets, baby.
We still got it. And I was getting a little concerned for a while, but I never bought back. And a lot of stuff didn't offer a lot of good numbers buying back. There was like some really heavily juiced, crazy stuff that you see sometimes. And I didn't have the opportunity, and I didn't want to anyway. That was one of the biggest ones I cashed just because the amount of times I was able to get some stuff down on it. But anyways, Wake Forest defense, very suspect. Wake Forest offense, you would expect ranking higher than 26 in success rate, right? Missouri's defense might be the best unit on the field. You got to love the SEC in this situation here. Missouri does have a 0.15 net yard per play advantage. I think I'm with you there. I might be tailing you on this one as well, but I'm going to wait to see if any more players sit out. Moving on to the Independence Bowl, Houston versus Louisiana. Louisiana plus 6.5, total 58. Shreveport, Louisiana, where this is played. I put Houston's motivation as medium low, and I don't know if I'm right on that, but man, you remember the preseason expectations for this team were so much freaking higher, Not only that, look at Dana Holgerson and what he does in bowl games. He burns your tickets. 2-7 against the spread. Probably the worst ATS coach coming into bowl season. You would think that the Louisiana would have the home field advantage, but to be honest with you, I did the math, same distance, about 250 miles away for this school, with the size of Texas and everything down there. Michael DeSormo, 1-0 against the spread in bowl games. Louisiana's kind of Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah,
it's weird how they lose to Louisiana Monroe, but then you beat Marshall and Georgia Southern. A better, little bit surprising Georgia Southern team. This is also Clayton Tune's last opportunity to impress, and so I am a little concerned about that. Houston does have a 0.66 net yard per play advantage. Houston harder schedule. My power ratings have this as more of an 8, but I'm scared to hit it. What are your thoughts?
I lean Louisiana. Haven't got to the window yet at all in this game. I think it's a high variance game. Wouldn't stun me if Louisiana won the game outright. Wouldn't stun me if Houston won by 3 touchdowns. I'm waiting to see. 7 would probably be the go for me on Louisiana. You mentioned Holgerson. I mean, you said it's the worst. Coming into bowl season, you are correct. That is the worst ATS mark. In fact, there's only one coach worse than him in the last 15 years in bowls. That would be Rod Carey from Northern Illinois and Temple. He was 0-7 against the spread in bowl games. But that's it. That's the only one worse. With guys, that coached 5 or more bowl games. I don't know what Houston's motivation is. They're such a Jekyll and Hyde team. I thought they were going to turn their season around. They lose to Tulsa as a double-digit favorite in the finale. Louisiana at least, looked impressive getting the bowl eligibility. It's just a lean for me, but I haven't bet it yet. And that says something. For a guy that's got 50-plus bets, the fact that I haven't bet it means I'm not really interested. I'm not seeing value.
That certainly says something, man, because I haven't bet it, like I said, either. Very interesting situation. And like we said earlier, Brad, waiting this out, finding out who's leaving, who's playing. We don't know for sure Clayton Tune's playing. There's lots of things that can happen. There's could even be some coaching moves and things like that. Wait for more information in some of these later games, Brad. Any other bowl games that you want to throw out before I ask you quick about the championship?
One that's interesting to me, and I certainly lean Washington, and I think, the number is going to drop as you get some more opt-outs for Texas. I think it's an intriguing game, period, because I think it's 2 good teams. And I think with Michael Penix coming back for Washington, could be a really kick start to their upcoming season. I know it's in the Alamo Dome, and you got to give Texas a little bit there. I just think with no Bijan Robinson, no Roshan Johnson, and some other guys out, and it's going to be on Quinn Ewers. I'm not a big Quinn Ewers guy. So give me Washington.
There you go. I was hoping you'd talk about Oklahoma, Florida State, because I have a bad play, I think, on Oklahoma at 7.5. Do you have any thoughts on that? I wish I could get out of this one.
I'm the Knowles there. The both tackles are out for Oklahoma. I think Eric Gray's out there, outstanding running back. I don't see it for the Sooners. I think they're focused on the recruiting trail next week or so.
I agree. And the reason I played, because I thought Venables would have, the team motivated being in his first bowl, but with all these opt-outs now, I realized I was on the wrong side of it. Probably shouldn't even be 7.5. It should be 10.5 right now.
Close 10.
In this situation in the NFL, I usually tease the other side and I take the semis down to 1.5 and find myself a good partner. But I don't love teasing college, but I might be forced to do something like that. It's not like it was a massive play or nothing. So real quick, it's funny. Georgia, Ohio State. I've downgraded Ohio State enough in my power ratings to actually make Georgia a 7-point favorite myself.
Oh,
wow. I'm one of the few, because I noticed that, I'm looking at all the public power ratings out there, at least, and they're way off. They have Ohio State a point or two under, but yours sounds like yours is probably a little bit more towards that direction. But did you bet Ohio State, Brad? I mean, do you trust them in this situation?
I took them +7. Do I trust them? I mean, is it my favorite bet I made? No, but I took a chunk. I took a pretty good piece when I saw +7 there. Just because I think there's an overreaction to what happened in the Michigan game in the second half. Look, it was really bad. It stunned me. But they're still, for as bad as that final was, they still were leading at halftime. And I still thought there was an opportunity in the middle of the second quarter where I thought they could take control of this game and run away with it. And they just didn't, for whatever reason. Michigan beat their cover 0 multiple times. And CJ Stroud just didn't look right. But I did give Georgia. I think you're really mistaken if you're not giving Georgia at least a 1.5. This is their third game inside the stadium this year. Even though the Buckeyes have sold out of their ticket allotment in a day, there's still going to be a Georgia crowd edge here. So even with all that, I made it closer to 4.5. So 7 was the play for me.
Okay, that going by power ratings, that makes sense. My problem with Ohio State is, they just, there's something wrong with them, and I can't figure out. I hate the Smith-Majiba thing. What the hell is going on? He said, I talked to my doctors. It's like, why didn't your doctor say that a long time ago? And why didn't you have surgery? I'm not saying I hate doubting people, but man, it stinks. It totally stinks. And then there, obviously the running back Henderson is going to have surgery, which isn't that was definitely a bad thing that happened with his injuries. And I guess Mayan's going to play, but something is wrong with Ohio State there, and I can't pinpoint it. And Michigan, TCU, my number here is 8.5. So I'm right at the spread here. It looks like TCU money came in, but I'm going to throw out a little bit of an interesting situation. I almost think Michigan would be a good first half bet, because the way TCU seems to kind of do things is with the smoke and mirrors at the end of the game, with the other team choking more or less. It almost feels like Michigan, you might get a -3.5, -4, or something like that in the first half. I don't even know if the lines are on the first half, but those are my initial thoughts. And I want to see where your numbers line up on the Michigan TCU.
So I was surprised there was some TCU money came in. I thought we were going to stay right in that dead zone, because it was right around 8 to 9. And then we got money on TCU. Circa went down to 7. I laid 7 with Michigan. I think TCU's overrated. So I think Michigan will lean on them. TCU hasn't seen an offensive line that Michigan has all season. So give me the Wolverines there. Even without Blake Corum, I think this is more business for them this year. They were happy to be in the playoff last year, got smoked. This time they're coming to win the national championship. I'm not sure that they'll win it, obviously, even if they play the Buckeyes in a rematch. But and they'll certainly be a dog against Georgia. But I like Michigan here to take care of business.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I like Michigan too. I think lots of fraudulent things happen. I love Max Duggan as a competitor. I think he's a great kid, but Michigan's just got bigger players, and and better players, I think, in the trenches, especially. TCU's defense is very overrated. I think Michigan's got the better skill players, and their backup running back's been awesome. The guy behind
How
Corey.
fortunate. Don't you wish you're a Michigan fan? I mean, how fortunate. I mean, they're not playing Alabama or Clemson or a historically great LSU team. They get to play TCU in a semifinal.
I know. It screws Georgia over, doesn't it? They have to play Ohio State.
To say the least. I mean,
but it's funny. The first team gets punished under this way of doing things. It's so weird because Ohio State not deserving still, but way better in TCU and people's power ratings. Just such a
TCU's,
weird.
I mean, Buckeyes are laying a touchdown plus against TCU. Unbelievable.
I know. Yeah, it's I mean, as a Big Ten fan, I hope it's Michigan, Ohio State again. But Georgia's my best team in my power ratings. I think they win it all. And I think Michigan might give them a run for their money, though, when Michigan gets through this. And obviously, if it's not Ohio State, it's going to be really cool to see this rematch because Michigan was embarrassed at the beginning of that game last year. I thought there was kind of some bad officiating the first half, but we don't got to get into that. But I'm excited to see this baby again. So I hope it's either Michigan, Ohio State number 1, but I'll take Michigan, Georgia as number 2. Brad, we're out of time, my man. I really appreciate your information and all your insights and all the love that you give our listeners, giving out the plays like that, my man. I'm so appreciative that you came on all year as well and just helped educate us on your great knowledge of college football. Wanted to thank you so much for everything you've done for the Odds Breakers.
Hey, man, no problem, man. Happy holidays to everyone watching and listening. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Let's win some money here the next 3 weeks.
Let's win some money. Where can our listeners get your great information and plays?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at BradPowers7. Check out my website, BradPowersports.com.
All right, make sure you guys check out Brad Powers. Brad, we'll be talking soon. Thanks again.
All right, thanks for having me.